your phones out and your ring lights. We about to go live. Come on your phone screen, man, we going live.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. And today I have Scott Whitney with me. And, I'm really excited to talk to Scott. A couple things is Scott has a background in construction like I did before I got in the insurance business. But he tells a story about how he got in this business. And I want to go there first. But Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. It's good to be here. It's good to see you.
So I want to, I've been told the story a few times about how you got in the insurance business. And first of all, how did you get introduced to Ron? And I want to talk about that story in a minute, about how you kind of came back and forth and then, what the expectation was when you first started in the industry.
Right.
So how did you get introduced to Ron Kellogg like I did?
So back when I was in the insurance business as a general contractor, built these nice homes. I did it for like 12 years, right?
Yeah.
And they were nice homes. I made a good living.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I was getting burned out. The market started to change. And it was just getting time for me to maybe make a change, right? I had no idea what I was going to do. And so anyway, I just started looking around. I started looking in the papers at the want ads and all this other stuff. I mean, it started, I'm going from making a good living to looking at want ads, right?
Okay.
And so anyway, I cut one of the ads caught my eye and says, you make 6 digits in your first year selling Medicare insurance.
Okay.
For the senior market, right? I'm sitting there thinking, really, 6 digits my first year? Where do I sign up, right? So I went and talked to this guy. And this is all leading up how I met Ron, right? So I went and talked to this guy, and he says, yeah. He says, you're going to make well over 6 digits your first year selling insurance in the senior market, right? And I'm sitting there, okay. But after talking to this guy for about 10 minutes, I knew there was a lot of fluff and a lot of stuff in there, right? So anyway, long story short, I bumped into a friend of mine. He says, hey, if you're thinking about selling insurance in the senior market, you need to go see this guy, Ron Kellogg.
Okay.
And I says, really? He says, yeah. So I thought about it. So anyway, I made an appointment with Ron. I was telling Ron sat me down across his desk. I'll never forget it like it was yesterday. And he sat me down. We talked a lot about the market, what it brings to you, the rewards, the heartache, all the good stuff, and how hard you got to work at it, right? But anyway, he says, Scott, he says, you're going to make, he says, if you work full time and work really hard, he says, you'll probably make between $8,000 and $12,000 the first year. And after I picked myself up off the floor and sat back down, I said, what? And he says, you'll make it. That's if you work hard. He says, you'll make between $8,000 to $12,000 the first year. But then he went on to talk to me about the rewards of the business and the relationships you build in the business, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I went home and talked with this lady that I was seeing at the time and stuff. And we talked about it. And she says, hey, you've got my support. Let's do this. I says, okay. So I came back to Ron, sat back in his chair, and he says, let's do this. He says, I'll help you in any way I can. Mm-hmm. So that's how I first got to meet Ron.
Yeah. Well, didn't it go back and forth? If I remember, he said you were like, because you had this guy saying, hey, you're going to make 6 figures your first year. And then you went back and interviewed Ron again, and Ron's like, and then, am I get that right? And then didn't something about you had to write him a check?
Yeah, and so this guy charged me like $250 or something for some material or something. I can't even remember. This has been 24 years now.
Okay.
25 years ago now. But yeah, he did. And then he kept the check anyway for his time, whatever. And
he cashed the check. So he says you're going to make 6 figures. He says that, I'm going to help you, but you need to write me a check.
Yeah.
And then
he cashed it. And then when I said, I'm, changed my mind. Yeah. So he just kept it and stuff or whatever the case might be. But
so then you go back and forth from, interview Ron, interview this guy, interview Ron, interview this guy. And then wasn't there a time where Ron says, hey, you need to be able to provide for yourself? Yeah. And Ron says, do you have $20,000 in savings? And how'd that story go?
So that's exactly what it was. And so bottom line, when I made the commitment to do this, right, I thought, man, I need some money to live on. And Ron rides Harleys. I've ridden Harleys for 40 plus years. Mm-hmm. And it was a big commitment on my side. Anyway, I sold out this tricked out Harley that I had.
Oh, you sold it?
I sold it so I could live off of that for the first year. And so Ron knew I was committed. And so I sold it. And
Wow.
so then at the time, back in the day, we'd buy these 3 inches of call leads, these call lists, right? And so I just remember I was just sitting day after day after day just on that phone, just trying to make an appointment or 2 appointments or 3 appointments, whatever it was, but I was committed. I was going out with Ron at the time. Me and Ron, we'd go up to Idaho, we'd go up to Wyoming, we'd go all over Utah traveling because he liked to drive, right? But I'd listen and learn for hours upon hours why we'd travel,
Hmm.
right? But still the greatest times ever, right? But anyway, the bottom line is we did that for a year. I mean, I was mentored by Ron Kellogg, the godfather of the Medicare world. I mean, who gets to do that? I was so humbled and so honored, that he'd take me under his wing. I mean, here's the man taking me under his wing for a year and a half to show me the ropes, right? But he knew I was committed because I sold that motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
Because he knew how much I loved to ride, right? But I'll always remember this. So into my second year, and I worked my guts out. He wasn't lying when he said I was going to make 8 to 12,000 a year. That's exactly what it was, and that was working hard, right? But I always remember, Ty, and it was the coolest thing ever, is that I started making some money finally and feeling good. I could see the rewards starting to come in, right? And I remember coming into Ron's office. I knew what I was going to do, but Ron didn't. But I remember going to Ron's office and I says, "Come on, let's go for a ride." And so he says, "Where are we going?" I said, "Just jump in my truck, let's go." And we drove down to the Harley store. It was Monarch Harley at the time. We drove down to the Harley store and I says, "I want you to be a part of this." I says, "You got me to this point and I want you to be a part of this and sharing this with me." And anyway, I bought a new motorcycle from the floor that day and I took him with me to do it.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. And so it was pretty cool and stuff. And so, anyways, it was a cool moment because it started to evolve. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? From when I started to that point, and Ron got me to there, and that's why I wanted to share that early success with him already.
I didn't know, or I missed the part of the story that you had sold the motorcycle. I thought you said
Yeah,
I could sell the motorcycle to make to basically get by,
yeah.
but I didn't know you sold it.
Yeah, I literally sold it, made about 20 grand on it and stuff, but that's what I lived on the first year. Till
That's
things started to ramp up a little bit.
I talk about being committed or interested, right? If you're interested, you're going to come up with all the excuses. I don't have the time. I don't have this. So you're going to come
Sure.
up with all the excuses. But if you're committed, you're going to get all of the excuses out of the way and you're going to move forward. I mean, look at that sacrifice you made. If you sacrifice 1 to 2 years, even 3 years in this business, any insurance business, in the
Sure.
residual income world as we know it, you're gonna see success,
Absolutely.
and you just steady the course. Was it hard?
It was crazy hard. It's a huge commitment. It's like I tell my agents that I talk with that are coming on board and stuff, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the rewards that you get at the end, right? And along the way. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's a huge commitment.
Is it a six-figure income? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Is it a multiple six-figure income? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
More millionaires are made in the insurance business than any other type of business out there, and yet people struggle with the same insecurities and doubts and can I do this? I did.
Absolutely.
But I don't remember those days, right?
Yeah,
I just one day at a time. I had a hard day. Let's go on to the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always got to look for the positive and stuff because you're going to definitely have those negative days. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And the people you meet and you think, "Oh my gosh, really?" But you just move to the next day and that day is going to be better. Maybe the next day is going to even be better. And it just goes on. It starts to snowball for you. And then you really start to see the rewards coming in. You think, "Man, this really wasn't too bad. Let's just keep this thing rocking and rolling." And it just snowballs, man. It's awesome. It's a great, great business. And Ty, I don't know about you, but I don't think a lot of people wake up of a morning and say, "You know what? I think I'm going to be an insurance agent
No.
today." You know what I'm saying? What are you
No.
going to do with your life? I don't know. But I don't think very many of them say, "I'm going to be an insurance agent," when they're asked, "Hey, what do you want to be?" type of thing, But what a great, great industry.
Well, yours was a choice, right? Getting out of construction. Mine was a force out. Like, here's your last paycheck. See you later. Goodbye. And then I started looking for opportunities. But I tell people that was the worst and best thing that ever happened to me, because the impact I've been able to make on the other side, helping people get in the business.
Right.
And all of the stories I can tell along the way of agents or consumers that have been helped, and they've been helped in a good way to better their lives, or to better their health, or to get on the right insurance program, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And the stories you get along the way.
Ty, that's what I was going to mention is not only is the income and all the stuff, that's all rewarding and stuff. But realistically, one of the coolest things about this insurance business, and Ron taught me this, he says, take an extra 10 minutes in that home and just let them tell their story. I always remember that. And you do. That's how you start building that trust. That's how you start building that relationship with that client / friend. It becomes more of a friend than a client down the road, right? But to hear their stories and to hear some of them, can I just tell you?
Oh, no, that's
two of my,
absolutely.
But one, when I was thinking about last night again, and I'll never forget these two stories. And back when I very first started, the people that we talk with in this industry, the senior market, they're all 65 and over, right?
Yep.
They're all on fixed incomes, and some of them on extremely fixed income, right? And I remember this lady when I first started this business, and I still get emotional and I still get goosebumps and stuff. But I'm sitting across her table. Long story short, her luxury, the thing that she wanted the very most, was asparagus. That was her favorite food, and she told me she couldn't afford it. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? This is for real? Seriously? So anyway, long story short, we go through our appointment and stuff. After we're all done, we say our goodbyes, thank yous, and all this stuff. And I went over to the store, and I bought like 3 big bundles of asparagus. And I brought them back to her home. I've never seen anybody cry so hard in my life. Just something
over
that
a food.
over asparagus. Are you kidding me? And that's the rewards this business brings you. So she thought she was rewarded. Oh my gosh, I was the one that was rewarded the most, right? But that's just one of many. But let me tell you one more that Ron was with me, if that's okay.
No, you're great.
So Ron took me up. We're up in Lander, Wyoming. And we go to see this gentleman. We're sitting around. It's just a single gentleman. This is up in Lander, Wyoming. And we're sitting around the table, this kitchen table. And he's telling us about his Normandy days, D-Day. And oh my gosh, Ty, here's 3 grown men sitting around this table. This guy is telling us his experience as far as how red the ocean was, with just blood-filled water, right? And walking over his friends' buddies that had been killed on the beach, of Normandy and stuff, and how he's carrying his buddies out over his shoulder and all this stuff. And man, here's 3 grown men sitting around this table, tears streaming down our eyes, And again, it's just, these are the kind of stories that you get in this business if you just take a few extra minutes to listen, But there's many, many, many more like that. But it's a great business. Those are rewards to me,
We're in the people business and the service business.
Sure.
I've had, it reminds me of a story about a lady. She's like, like, what drives you, or what do you want to accomplish, or what keeps you up at night? Those questions you ask. And she just wanted to go and buy literally a Diet Coke. I mean, of all things, right? You think something so simple that, is $1, $1.50, maybe $1, that her luxury was getting a Diet Coke if she had extra funds at the end of the day. And when you sit down and analyze everything, you're like, hey, here's some options. And then, you provide a solution. It brings tears to your eyes.
Yeah, it does.
And then humbling at the same time. Like I've never seen anything or imagined anything like Normandy and that, but he lived through that, and the sacrifices that all those men and women made for our behalf.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really brings things in perspective of really what's important, what's not important, in a person's life, type of thing, And again, the simplicity of saying, I wish I had an extra $1.50 so I could go get a Coke. you know, and it makes you just so appreciative for really what you have, and again, put things in perspective, you know. So I don't know. That's what it's done for me in this business, you
Yeah,
know.
you're the impact you can make in the world.
Right, right.
I've said this many times. People will spend their last dollar to stay alive one more day, and it's interesting when you see that and watch it, and it's humbling also when you have a client or a consumer that you get the bad news. They're dealing with something in dire straits,
Sure.
or they call you and say, "Hey, my husband didn't wake up this morning." Right? That is the hardest part about this business.
It
Is you build
is.
this relationship with these folks, and you that's what I wish we didn't have. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, there's only one way out of here, right?
that's
And that's it's
right.
going to happen. So you just got to live the best you can and give back. But you look back at all those stories, and I mean, were you ever run off a porch? Or you ever like
Um, yeah, you get those ones. You know, I mean, we've been
I
doing this. I've
laugh.
been doing this for 24 years now,
Yeah.
right? And I know you're. I look at you as an old seasoned one too now. You
Yeah.
know, even though you're a lot younger than I am. I look at you as an old seasoned agent now too. But yeah, you have those. You have those people. You know, and especially back in the day, Ty. Remember back in the day to where now so much of it is digital and everything else. But back in the day, we'd get lead cards and we'd go knock on the doors.
That's right.
You know, just
Hmm.
we just go door to door to door to door to door and just cross our fingers and hope that we get in, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, you get those days when people would say what they want to say to you and boot you off the porch. Absolutely.
It reminds me of, I mean, I remember a couple times when you show up, and because we run lead cards, and the lead cards is like, you say, "Hey, is Mary here?" And you're looking for Mary, and the husband answered the door, and, "Well, why do you need Mary?" And I start getting the 10th degree, right? And then also, "Let me see that." All of a sudden he tears it up. Mary's not here. Throws it at you. You're like, "Okay, I guess next," right? You're like, "Okay, well, I was looking for Mary, but if the gatekeeper's not going to let me
That's
in,
right.
I'm on to the next one."
You
Well,
know, or you hand them that lead card and say, "That's not my signature. I didn't send this in. Are you sure that looks like your
yeah,
signature?"
you're
Right
like, I
there, or
don't,
whatever. I'm pretty sure. You know.
I'm not in the business of just making these things up. You're like,
Right.
I paid good money for this lead, right?
Right.
I paid really good
Oh my
money.
gosh. But yeah, after 24 years into it, we're still doing it. Still love every day what I do. you
Yeah,
know and again, it's about those relationships that you build. Yeah, the income is nice, that's for sure, but you work hard to get that income. And again, if it was easy, everybody would doing it, right? But
sure.
once you get over that hump, then you can really, really, really start to enjoy this business, start really accepting those rewards, accepting those relationships. And again, it turns into, like I said a minute ago, it turns into be more of a friendship than it does a client.
Mhm.
And these people, when stuff happens, and I can't tell you how many funeral services I've spoke at, or pallbearer, clients slash friends, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just an insurance agent. But they think more of you than just an insurance agent, of
Yeah.
course. And those relationships that you build, that's what it's all about.
Well, the fundamental definition of an insurance is that you protect people against financial risk.
Right.
And when you're able to get them on insurance that helps protect them against financial risk, and we know that the number one reason people file bankruptcy in this country is due to medical bills.
Yeah.
And to think that they can get insurance, but I think there's a big misconception with insurance agents, is I believe people believe that insurance agents cost money, which they don't. Whether you buy online, over the phone, or through the mail, it's the same cost to the consumer.
Right.
And I think consumers are also feared of being sold. And that's why you and I are brokers, is we don't care what people choose. I look at it as educating. We're presenting them with options and they pick. How many times do you
Absolutely.
present something, they're like, "Well, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't matter what I think. It's what you're comfortable with, because you have to decide what your risk tolerance is.
Sure.
Like, do you want copays? Well, then if you want copays and you can live with copays, then you got to do X. If you don't want copays, then you may want to look at this B, right?"
Yeah.
And all we do is present. And then the challenge we have is sometimes somebody calls us up and they want a certain program and they don't qualify because of health reasons.
Right.
And then you're like, "Listen, that's as good as you're going to get.
Yeah.
I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Well, I need more." I'm like, "It's as good as it's going to get." And consumers, I believe, and clients and friends, they just want to be told what's accurate.
Sure.
Like there's times when I'm like, it's not getting any better.
Right.
I mean, it's the cost of the cost.
And that's where you build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
So they believe in what you're saying.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you build that trust to get to that point, and that relationship to get to that point. Absolutely. And it's like I tell my clients, kind of along your line right there, Ty, or my prospective clients, I should say. And my job isn't to tell you what to do.
No.
My job is not to tell you what to do. I don't want that burden. But my job, I feel, is to make sure you understand.
That's
And
right.
make sure you understand how your choices and your options work. And then we can sit there and decide what's going to be a good fit for you, right? Or we can discuss that together. And if you want my professional opinion, I'll share that with you, type of thing. But my job isn't to tell you what to do. My job is to make sure you understand what your options are and how they work.
How many times where somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, I just got this bill," and you're like, "Yeah, that's what we talked about." They don't remember,
Right.
but they just want the reassurance. Do I have to pay this? Or there's times when people I'm like, do not pay that.
Right.
Like that, there's something
Right.
wrong, right? And like they obviously didn't bill your insurance, or there's a hiccup. Well, let's help you get that fixed.
Yeah.
Because it goes both ways. You spend a lot of time with Ron, and I love Ron to death. I would not be where I'm at without his help and his mentorship. If you're looking back, give me one or two moments or something maybe he said you're like this was wrong.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. There's a bunch, of course, my memories get shorter and shorter. But one thing as far as business that Ron always said, is business related.
Yeah.
One thing that's about this business, Ron says, it doesn't matter what the economy is. He says it doesn't matter if the economy is great, if the economy is horrible. It doesn't matter how the economy is. He says this job, this career, this profession, this industry is economic free. He says people, and especially in the senior market, people need to have their health insurance.
Yes.
He says it does not matter if it's great, if the economy is horrible. This is a great industry to be in because people need to have their insurance at this age and this stage of their life, right? And I always remember that because it's so true. We're in challenging times right now, even.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we have been for a while, right?
Yeah.
But we're in challenging times. But these people still need. We're offering a service. These people still need us.
Yeah.
Because they need their health insurance.
Well,
I always remember that.
You can look at it twofold. Ron used to always say, the products that we sell today may not be the products we sell tomorrow.
Right.
And then he used to also say, he's like, they need what you're selling them, right? So it doesn't matter what the economic future is holding, but they still need their insurance. And then as you serve and provide, it goes back to the products we sell today or the products we may not be selling tomorrow. But there is still a need.
Absolutely.
And that need is always there. Similar to that, I used to remember, he used to say, 4 out of 4 still need more, right?
There you go.
And he's like, because until they're covered completely, 4 out of 4, which means there's something you can do for them. Every person you meet with, there's something you can help them out with. There's a concern you can resolve. Maybe you don't have this, maybe they don't qualify, and maybe that's the only thing you got to deal with. But 4 out of 4 still need more. Whether they can afford it, that's on them.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we're just the presenter, right?
Absolutely. That's the way I look at it, man.
So that was a business. What about personal?
Oh, I don't know. There's a bunch. Ron was just a good guy. He was a good person, and he just really taught me the importance of being humble, being the best person I can be, offering service. One of the things, I still have it in my office, I look at it every single day. But one of the things is that, and it's a quote, I get it, but what he'd always tell me, he says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And I take that to heart, and you can use that in your everyday life, People are so anxious to talk and listen and give their opinion and everything else. And maybe more often we should just take a step back and just listen, You can learn so much more a lot of times if you can just listen sometimes, as opposed to throwing out your own personal opinions sometimes.
He used to tell one of the things that he would say is like, Ty, there's 1 or 2 times in your lifetime where you can serve and make this kind of money.
Absolutely.
Maybe. He said maybe you only get 1 shot at it, but to serve and make this kind of money. And you also said a couple of times, you're like, this business is hard. Meaning, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Sure.
Right? But the people that have the commitment to do it, and the people that you and I are around, and we've seen it, they're like you and I. They're living the dream.
Right.
And they're providing and changing people's legacies and changing financial futures and changing all of these things because of this business.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like, and again, the rewards. I mean, it just goes beyond
The dollars.
the dollars. It goes on with those relationships and the that you build along the way,
Yeah.
and what you can provide for your family and the service that you can offer to other people because of income or whatever the case may be, and the self-worth that you get from that doing service for others,
Yeah.
and that's another thing about Ron. He was very generous. You're the same way, Ty, but very generous with your time and your monies and everything else because I don't know.
You can't take it with you.
To do good is to feel good.
That's right.
It's that simple. I've got that on my desk also, And so because we are so lucky and so fortunate and so blessed, you want to share that with people, and offer those services and help where you can. That's another thing I've learned from him.
I did not realize at the time that I would be people's financial coach, tax advisor, CPA, spiritual counselor. I mean, I could go on, right? I didn't realize that helping people build a business for themselves, that all of those things would come in together.
Right.
And not only in fitness, right?
Right.
I just had a lady on the show that's like a bodybuilder competitor, right? And she talked about how she got out of her funk and depression and moving on. But that's what this whole industry is. It's all those things wrapped into one.
Absolutely.
Scott,
absolutely.
any last thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Gosh, I don't know. First of all, it's great to see you again.
Yeah,
man.
always.
Thanks for letting me come on and share my stuff. You'll
love it.
It's worth,
Yes.
But I don't know, Ty, man. It's just, if anybody's interested in this business and stuff, it is a wonderful, wonderful industry to be in.
Yes.
And rewarding in so many different areas and stuff. But the friendships you meet, that you make along the way, whether it be with your peers, whether it be with your clients, whoever it may be, it just gives you many opportunities. Work hard, strive hard, make a commitment. The rewards will be waiting for you. There's so many opportunities out there for all of us. We just need to take advantage of them,
Well said, Scott. Make the commitment. The reward will be there. That's a great way to end this podcast. As always, share, like, and subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.